Could we get Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness ported to the Switch? Please? Pretty please? What's up guys, Canadian Guy here, and back with another Pokemon video. But this time I want to pull back a bit on the time machine and visit two games from my childhood that to this day I felt was criminally underrated. And that was Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. These were both games that came out for the GameCube that took a turn from the normal Pokemon formula and jammed in a bunch of RPG elements to it. So the whole point of these games is that villains abduct Pokemon and then close their hearts in darkness. In doing this, the Pokemon gains in strength and power, but basically can't feel anything except for maybe anger and sadness. They have moves called Shadow moves that is super effective against basically all types of Pokemon except for other Shadow Pokemon, making these Pokemon a bit of a challenge to deal with. They also tend to be temperamental and sometimes won't listen to a word you say. However, though they are powerful, they cannot grow in terms of attacks or experience with their hearts closed. They stay the same level from when their hearts were closed and can't gain any more stats. That's where you come in. You are a trainer that has a piece of tech called the Snagger, which can actually steal Pokemon from people. As you would know, this is a big no-no in the series and against the rules, so you can see why villains want this piece of tech so badly. But you decide to use this controversial piece of tech to actually steal Shadow Pokemon that's being distributed to trainers. Through battling, helping, and simply bonding with these Pokemon, you can unlock their hearts and purify the Shadow Pokemon so that they can feel and grow again. To add incentive, all the experience that the Pokemon would have gained is banked. When their heart is purified, they gain all that experience back immediately. These games add a different spin on Pokemon, a spin that was utterly refreshing and completely shocking for its time. They were able to change and add to the Pokemon formula without ripping out its soul and making it not feel like a Pokemon game. It still had the core fundamentals, but instead of getting rid of some core values and replacing them, they simply slightly altered or added new features. When you were walking around in the world, you could see trainers walking around with their Pokemon casually, kind of similar to Pokemon Let's Go. But this game also added a new angle of difficulty. See, the games were almost exclusively using double battles, and you wouldn't know when the Shadow Pokemon would be thrown out. So you would have to weaken the Pokemon without killing it in the midst of a Pokemon battle with a trainer. You treat Pokemon that you're trying to catch very differently from trainer battles, right? And now you have to deal and balance both elements at the same time during a double battle. It's not the easiest thing to do overall, because if you lose the battle, you lose the Shadow Pokemon and you gotta retry the battle again. So why do I want these games to come back so badly? Well, other than the fact that I think these games were absolutely epic and the fact they sold decently on the GameCube, selling an estimate of almost 4 million combined, these games coming to Switch can bring quite a bit of information to the Pokemon Company and Nintendo. Now you might be thinking, wow, only 4 million across two games? Canadian Guy, hey, that's not a lot, and in today's market that would be almost true. However, there's a stat involved here, and that's the GameCube itself. According to multiple sources, they all gauge between 18 to 22 million GameCube consoles were sold worldwide. So let's make it easy and say that it was 20 million, which is sad because, you know, the GameCube was really good. Those sales aren't great, but that's not the point. Colosseum sold an estimate of 2.41 million units, and Gale of Darkness sold 1.42 million units. That means about 12% of all GameCube owners own Colosseum and 7% own Gale of Darkness. To give an example, comparing those kinds of stats, even though Crash sold an average about 7 million per game, the PlayStation 1 sold 104 million units worldwide. But for the sake of easy math, I'm going to say they sold 100 million units. That means 7% of all PlayStation owners own Crash Bandicoot. Of course, there are many other factors involved when it comes to sales, but to argue that the games did not sell as well as others during its time has its console to blame due to its small sales pool, even though I still think the GameCube was an awesome console. To add on to the fact of how many people love this game, if you were to go to almost any ROM site for GameCube emulation, quick pause of the video, I do have to legally say that I do not support illegal downloads of ROMs. Please make sure you own the titles. I am showing screenshots of these sites, but not for promotional purposes, but for only educational purposes only. And neither do I support or advocate illegal downloads of ROMs. Okay? Okay. But in the top 10 in terms of number of downloads, Pokemon Colosseum and or Pokemon Gale of Darkness are constantly within the top 10, showing that there is a love and a market for these games. But these games could be probes of information if they bring it to the Switch. After the Gen 8 announcement, though most people are excited for it, there was also a feeling of exhaustion. People wanting something a bit different from the original core Pokemon game, and that's where these ports could bring a good chunk of info. See, Pokemon Let's Go was a mainline title game that catered to a bit of a different audience. However, it still sold well and people still enjoyed it. A lot of people that felt that exhaustion of Pokemon in general had a mixed bag of feelings towards Pokemon Let's Go. It wasn't exactly what they thought it was going to be, but it was different and fresh for the Pokemon franchise. Heck, a lot of people wanted aspects of Let's Go integrated into the mainline world of Pokemon Sword and Shield, like the free roaming Pokemon or having a companion. The mixed bag of feelings that people have towards Pokemon Let's Go and the exhaustion from the mainline series shows that there could be room for a third kind of entry into the IP, and I believe that Pokemon Colosseum franchise can fill that void. While the other Pokemon games have you collecting badges from gym leaders and catching wild Pokemon and raising them, the Colosseum franchise brings something completely different. Instead of gym battles in the Elite Four being the main point with some overarching side story overall, the Colosseum franchise follows a story exclusively. That story is to find all the Shadow Pokemon, purify their hearts, and shut down the whole operation so that no more are made. There are plot twists, surprises, and many other factors that these games bring while keeping a feeling of freedom in the world. You can mess up and faint a Shadow Pokemon and you won't be able to see it again until much later on. Or you could outright miss trainers that have Shadow Pokemon and have to go back to find them. There are also a bit more darker tones in the game than a normal Pokemon game. Not by a great amount, but nonetheless it's still a bit darker. Okay, so what would be the point of these games coming back? Do I just want my nostalgia fix on the go? Not quite. See, these games simply getting ported to the Switch will be able to gauge the interest of these style of mechanics to Pokemon fans, and since they would only be basic ports as the graphics are actually still decent on today's terms, the cost to port these games would be fairly low. And you could slap the name Pokemon on pretty much anything and people will buy it like crazy. But they can gauge people's interest with these ports of these games as a bundled deal and see if people are still interested in them. If it turns out to be a success, then a new game can be made with aspects and mechanics of these games migrated over. Not touching the core Pokemon franchise, but making a third one overall, adding on from the Let's Go, the core regular Pokemon, and the Colosseum IP, I suppose would be called. Thus making a new Pokemon series for fans to eat up, but also filling that void of fans who are feeling Poke exhausted, who love Pokemon but desire more of an RPG and story elements to it. If it fails, they will still make a massive amount of money as, like I said, it's a Pokemon game and they would simply be ports of previous titles, so the cost to make these games will be greatly reduced compared to making new games, or even remastering them. One other thing that the Colosseum franchise did that was interesting was that not all Pokemon in the franchise at the time was in the game. There was a large pool of Pokemon for sure that was selected, but that was it. See, a great friend of the channel, Jordan Fringe, made a point in his recent Pokemon video that I wanted to mention. I'll throw that video in the link below, but he talked about the fact that the Pokemon Company needs to create in the ranges of 800 models for Pokemon Sword and Shield, as one of the main components to Pokemon is to, well, catch them all. Not to mention special effects and animations also need to be applied to these 800 models. However, if a new title were to be developed that was inspired by these ports of Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, they would not have to put all 800 Pokemon into the game and perhaps be able to stick to a smaller pool. Therefore, allow for more time on characters and story, as those elements are core in an RPG-driven game. overall, I think these games could fill a void that some fans are starting to feel when it comes to Pokemon, and allow the Pokemon Company to bring fresh ideas to the table while keeping their core franchise untouched. But what do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Comment below and let me know. By the way, a huge shout out to my Patreons and sponsors on the channel. I appreciate your support and letting me be able to do this full time, as I got a family to feed. If you want to support the channel, the Patreon is in the description below, and be sure to subscribe for more nostalgic content. And while you're at it, why not check out another video I recently made? Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.